Hey everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Dollar Beer Night, where anything can happen and probably will. My name is Dillon, and I will be your host this episode. My co-hosts with me are Tommy, Zach, and Kevin, and in episode 2, we will be discussing what album changed your life. It will be a roundtable discussion with each person talking about an album that changed their life. We are so excited for you guys to join us this week, and thank you for listening. Welcome to Dollar Beer Night. Welcome, everyone, to Dollar Beer Night. This is episode 2. My name is Dillon Hyden, and I'm your host. And with me, I'll just go to my left, Zachary Rotello.
Hello. You called me by my the formal name that my mom calls me when I was
when you're in
she
trouble.
Was mad at me back in the day. Yeah. How you doing, Dillon?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'd be a little bit better if someone remembered to bring my Dapper Apparel Company shirt.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Shout out to Dapper
That's a good
Apparel.
plug.
Yeah, that's a little plug.
With us is Thomas.
Hey, what up?
What up? I don't know how to say your last name, or else I would have said it. Becerra? Okay.
Becerra. It's Becerra.
That's good. I'll write that down.
Okay.
How you doing, Tom?
Doing great. Can I say where we ate?
Yeah, sure.
We ate at Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
We had ice. We had some ice cold beers and some good wings and burgers.
What degree were those beers, Tom?
29 degrees.
No, they were 32.
Exactly.
They were 32. According to the
31.8.
wall. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
We have some bones to pick with the Twin Peaks Brewing Company. They're in Amarillo, Texas. Where
Yeah,
they
it was
come from.
3 degrees warmer than we wanted it to be.
Yeah. They were great.
Yeah, it was good, though. It was good food.
It was a good time.
All right. What about you, Kev? What are you up to?
Not much. I talked about how I was trying to plat Death Stranding last week, and I did it.
I watched it.
Hell yeah.
And Tommy watched it.
great.
I streamed on Twitch for just Tommy again. It seems to be a theme. But yeah, I did it, and it took me like a little over 100 hours, and it feels good.
Jeez, 100 hours. Holy cow.
I'm
So
at like 97.
How are you going to fill that void now?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of staring at a wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. I mean, I go through spurts like that where if I find a game I really like, I'll just play the shit out of it, and then I just
Yeah.
won't play video games for a while. So I
Yeah.
played a little bit of Outer Worlds yesterday once I got a break. But yeah, and then I listened to the albums you guys sent me to listen to. So
Ooh,
Yeah, I am.
tease,
I'm so excited. We all kind of picked different. I mean, me and Tommy kind of picked same genre, almost the same year.
Yeah.
But besides that, it's all very diverse. Tommy and I were actually talking today that I feel like him and I grew up together, even though we've only known each other like 4 months at this point.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy because when it comes to music, him and I just like send each other something. And we're like, oh yeah, I listened to that. Did you listen to this? Oh yeah, I've listened to that. It's awesome.
Dollar Beer Night, bringing estranged friends together since never.
Yeah.
Since yesterday.
I love telling my wife about Dylan. I'm like, Dylan like used to listen to this band, and he likes this shit.
Did we just become best friends?
He's just like us.
It's basically the episode or the scene of Step Brothers where they're like,
Yeah.
did we just become best friends?
Yup. Do you want to do karate in the garage?
Yup.
Were you going to ask me and Tommy what we're doing? You just asked Kevin what we're up to. You didn't ask us what we're up to.
Oh,
you know,
what are you
Dylan?
up to, Zach?
Oh, not a whole
No,
lot.
no. I want to know. I need to know.
Really not a whole lot else, man. Just getting prepped for this. Getting caught up on, finally started Fargo Season 3, getting hyped for that. Did you know that Fargo Season 4 starts in April and Chris Rock is the lead actor?
What?
Yeah, Chris Rock is like the main character of this. It's supposed to be about like this low-level mafia in like I think it's like the 60s or the 50s, but Chris Rock is like the lead in the show.
That is very surprising.
I'm excited to see it, but yeah, shout out to Fargo. Season 2 we just finished was excellent. Season 3 has Ewan McGregor playing 2 separate roles in the show, and it also
Clumping it, huh?
You get clumping it, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in it too, and she is fine.
Foyne?
Yeah, Foyne. Foyne with 2 O's. And
Okay.
you also get to see just a glimpse of booty.
Okay. That's
So-
all we needed.
Yeah. Seal of approval on that bad boy.
So, Tommy, what have you been up to?
I started back to school yesterday.
Okay.
Doing the forensics again.
Yeah.
Back on that forensics train.
Dissecting a brain.
Yeah, I'm in anatomy this time. Some crime scene and forensics classes in a criminal procedure class. So we'll see how all that goes. I met all my teachers. They seem dope. I'm excited for this semester. But that's pretty much all I got going.
That's
on.
going to take up a lot of your time.
Yeah, but I'll be here.
Yeah.
I'll be here.
We made 7 cents this past week too. Can
Yeah.
we get,
Well,
can
what?
we get like
Oh, yeah.
a? Can we get like a? You know, you used to do the snaps when you did something like in junior high
Some
school.
slam poetry.
Can we
Yeah.
give each other a star like Sam gets in Death Stranding every time he gets
Light.
Light?
Shout out to everyone that listened to episode
Yeah,
1. I think it
huge
went
shout
it
out.
went over really well. We had a lot of people that I didn't expect to listen. Give us a shout out and tell us that they like what we're doing. So it felt good to do it. So it was exciting to hear that people were receptive to it.
And we're now on week 2 of predictable programming, as one might say. This episode will go live on Friday, so if you're listening to it now, you'll see it this coming Friday, the 29th, 30th or something like that. 30th, is it the 31st?
Yeah,
I
31st.
got both those dates fucking wrong, but you know. But yeah, where can people find us, Dylan? If people were going to listen to Dollar Beer Night,
Yeah, they can listen to us on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and most podcast services around the world. And quit making us pending, iHeartRadio,
Yeah,
because we're tired of
iHeartRadio.
waiting.
what's the deal?
I don't know.
iHeartRadio don't heart Beer Night. You know
Who
what I'm saying?
listens to iHeartRadio?
Well, if you do, if you're
apologize.
stuck in a time machine from 2010,
Hey, you know, doesn't iHeartRadio does some like live shows and
Yeah,
stuff?
dude,
So
have
if
the
we ever,
iHeart Music Festival.
yeah, so if
Yeah,
we
I
ever
guess.
want to get big enough to headline the iHeart Music Radio Festival,
yeah, we'll just edit that out.
apologize.
We'll go back and edit that
I
out.
apologize, iHeartRadio.
If you
Nah,
would
fuck
like,
it.
if you would like to check us out on Twitter, you can go to @DollarBeerPod. We're active on there. At least Zach is. Are you guys signed in?
I haven't signed in yet, but I will because I like that stuff.
Yeah. So we're active on Twitter. We're also active on Insta. You can go to Dollar Beer Night. That's all one word. And if you have questions you want to email us, or if you have concerns, you have comments, you don't like the way Kev said words, you can go to dollarbeernightshow@gmail.com. If you would like to reach out to Kevin and see why he hates chocolate, that's dollarbeernightshow@gmail.com.
I love that this is a meme.
It's
I
not,
love
it's
that
not
it's
a meme. It's not a meme.
Dude, that's
There'll
gonna
be a
one-
meme.
It's gonna be one of our first like shirts. It's gonna be like Kev hates chocolate,
fine.
and he's gonna be like, "Fuck
It's
What
fine.
are they
I'm not gonna
selling? And it's got Kev's face on it.
chocolate." I remember.
I remember when they invented chocolate.
yeah, with the email too. I don't know if I hope you guys agree with me, but if you guys have like questions about the topics or like more specific things that maybe you were expecting us to talk about, or if there's like weird off the wall things like this blah 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 happened this week, why didn't you guys talk about it or at least mention it in the pre-roll or during the banter? Blah. Please send that stuff out because you know if you guys are listening to the show and you know you're going to help inform how the show is going to evolve over time, and we
Yeah.
love to talk about that
love
stuff.
that.
Or like future topics,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We decide tonight what next week's topic's going to be. So if you got some off the cuff things that you think would be fun to talk about, throw them at us. Mm-hmm. We're pretty quick on our feet. So
Also, y'all make sure out there if you're in the Dollar Beer Night fan club, we need to find a name for our fans, but make sure
our 50-cent sluts.
50 make sure that you get your Sonic the Hedgehog tickets now. They're selling out fast. If I've been informed correctly, they're going quick.
Yeah.
They're going quick. They said that the ticket pre-sales are better than Avengers, Star Wars, and James Bond
No
combined.
way.
Yeah.
No, I'm bullshit.
Oh, okay. I was buying 100% into that. I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
I wouldn't have been shocked if it was true, but yeah.
How many seats do you think are going to be open when we go to see
I
Sonic?
bet it'll be mostly full.
You think it'll be mostly
Yeah,
full?
there's a lot of people around our age that are at least curious, or are Reddit users, and we'll go
Oh, yeah.
just for the meme of it.
Are we going to all take Sega controllers into the theater with us and act like we're playing the game?
Oh, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
a wonderful idea.
I love this idea.
Okay.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I like that.
That might be our first video is us taking Sega controllers into us.
It's a live stream of the movie, but it's not the movie. It's just us in the seats, like going like this, kind of like fingering the controllers. It's perfect.
So you guys ready to get into it?
Let's get into it, bud.
I'm
you
so
are.
excited. So my prompt at the end of the episode last week was I wanted to talk about an album that changed our life. It was going to be tough to say like one specific album, so I didn't say the album that changed your life the most. I kind of just left it open-ended. That way we can each pick one kind of off the cuff. I wanted everyone to pick one that first came to their mind. And just looking at the list, I think we all kind of just picked something that was important but wasn't necessarily if we made a list like top 5 or something like that, I think it would be harder to do. But picking one specific one and each of us talking about it and giving each other a chance to listen to it and talk about it was interesting for me, because this album that I picked was so important to me during my formative years. So for you guys to listen to it, some of you for the first time, or some of you that have listened to it before, it's important for me to see or hear what you guys hear, because what I hear is the same thing I heard 10, 12 years ago. So who wants to go first?
As far as like talking about their album?
Yeah.
I don't care. I can go if you want.
Yeah, I'm thinking you.
Mine is the early, or no, Zach's is earlier, way earlier. But mine is, I think, the most wildly different, probably.
Yeah.
So for me, I want to talk about like my process of selecting this album a little bit, because there was a lot of albums that I went through. Like, I decided pretty early on that I wanted to do something in the metal realm, because that's what I grew up as a metalhead. Metallica was one of my favorite bands. It's been one of my favorite bands ever since I can remember. I think my parents told me a story about if they wanted me to go to sleep, they would just turn on Metallica, and that would put me to sleep. So I wanted to do something in that realm pretty early on. I thought about the Marshall Mathers LP, because I fucking love that album. It was one of the first albums I had from a car driving around.
Yep.
I thought about a couple of Daft Punk albums, Discovery, which I talked about a little bit last week, and then their Alive 2007, which is one of the best, if not the best, live album ever, in my opinion. And then once I got into the metal realm, I started to think about like what really changed the way I listened to that genre. And the first thing that came to my mind was the Roots album by Sepultura. I listened to it for the first time completely on accident. It was in one of my older brother had left it in a CD case of another CD. I forget what I was trying to listen to, but I popped that in, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" Because that album, it's Sepultura is a band from Brazil, I believe, and they decided to make this album sound like it's from like the tribes of the Amazon, and it sounds fucking awesome. I didn't know metal could do that. I didn't know any music could do that and do it cohesively and coherently. So I was really, really close to listening to doing that one, because I thought it would be funny to have you guys listen to that, because it's jarring. It's not for beginners, certainly. But as I was listening back to it, I decided it was just a bit too dense. And then, sorry, I'll get to my album eventually.
No, you're good. You're good.
I got it down to 2. I got it down to the one I picked, which is Super Buick by Mushroomhead, and then Cowboys from Hell by Pantera. Because that Cowboys from Hell is what I think every person that wants to listen to metal should listen to. The way Vinnie Paul hits his snare, it's like a puncture wound. It feels like you're getting stabbed by his drums, and the way Dimebag Darrell plays around his rhythm section, it's great.
Peace.
It's a really long album though, so I didn't want to use it. Yeah, rest in peace, both of them actually. But yeah, Pantera is one of my favorite bands of all time. So I was really close to picking that, but I settled on Super Buick because Mushroomhead is so much different from any other metal band I've listened to. Their albums sound very different. They record metal in a very strange way. I want to get your guys' thoughts on the album before I hop into why I love the album so much. So,
yeah, I like that.
Start with Zach.
Well, I had never heard of Mushroomhead before, and Kevin had talked to me about this band during our days working together. I'm sure that this band came up once or twice, if not a couple dozen of times, either by reference or just by generic like, hey, check this out, or hey, this is a song that I really liked, or hey, this is a concert that I went to. Or not concert. You've never seen them live,
I've never seen them live, no.
Okay, but you've described what their shows are like, I think. You
might be thinking about Guar shows, because Guar shows are absolutely insane.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a member of not Super Buick? I keep getting the name of the band
Sure.
mixed up in the album, because Super Buick is a kick-ass band name, too.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good name for an album.
Yeah.
But didn't you tell me once that there was a member of Mushroomhead where his name was like Pig Venus or something like that?
No. I mean, that sounds like something that might be Guar, where it was like there's Odorous Arungus, who, again, R.I.P., Ballsack. The lead singer for the guy who does the clean vocals, his name is J-Man. That's what he goes by. But as far as I know, there's nobody with a weird name in Mushroomhead. But I'm sure we've talked about Mushroomhead before because they're local, like a local-ish band that I grew up loving.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, regardless, so I popped this album in after Kevin put it in the list of songs we needed or albums we needed to go through for this episode, and I listened to the full record, Super Buick, and I'll say right off the get go, it's not my cup of tea. Obviously, what the music that I would normally listen to. I did find some really cool enjoyment from the album. Obviously, it's metal, lots of heavy guitar, lots of extended. I don't know if you. This might be. Hopefully, this isn't insensitive in the metal world because I don't really know.
I mean, it's an exploratory thing. So,
but I don't know if the term jam session necessarily applies to metal.
That's not something I would say in metal.
Okay, but there are a lot of moments of these songs where the album is structured pretty well. It's pretty brisk for a rock album. It's concise. There's no song longer than 6.5 minutes, I think, on the record.
I think you're right.
Which is interesting because the metal albums that I've been, exposed to my whole life are like Metallica and stuff like that, where it's like it's totally normal to have a song on the record that's like 12 or 13 minutes long.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just mentioned how the two of the albums I wanted to use were too long.
Right.
Right.
And so I really enjoyed that. In fact, blessings to both of you that put these albums in, that they were easy listens, that they weren't like these extended LPs with like 14-minute bangers and all this stuff. Like, I really enjoyed that I could put these on and I listened to them from front to back and I didn't have much struggle going through them. And in fact, I got a little bit out of both and I'm glad for that. But for Super Buick, I really enjoyed track number 4 called The Wrist.
Yes, love The Wrist.
Mostly because it has a sample of Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me dialogue at the very beginning, which I thought was really cool. When I heard that, I was like, I know where this is from. Where is this from? And then I spent the whole song like thinking about it, did a little bit of research, and I was like, oh shit, it's from the David Lynch film, the follow-up to the TV show, which I love. I love David Lynch. And the quote that they use is from Albert about like, they're discussing like the body of like the deceased girl, and they're like, it's a pretty disturbing sequence in the film where they're describing about like what she was before she died, like what her body was like, and it plays into the song. The song is obviously like a very depressing, like a life song, talking about like, what is it to be alive, depression, even, the song is called The Wrist, like cutting the wrist, maybe suicidal stuff in there. So I dug that track a little bit, a lot actually, especially because of the Twin Peaks sample. And then I really enjoyed Flattened, track 6. This one resonated with me the most out of the record, and I wrote probably because it's due to being one of the least heavy tracks.
Sure.
It's very light, and it has a very memorable chorus and melody to it, which when we start talking about records and everyone else's, we'll start getting into what I like most about music, and it's having strong melody and cadence and being able to like get into a rhythm with the song. And so I'm glad you made me listen to it. It was, I don't regret listening to it at all. I found some enjoyment out of it.
I think that's the key with this album too. Is it's very accessible. It's more accessible than the rest of the albums that I thought about picking from Mushroomhead because there is those slower tracks. It's very synth heavy too, which I thought you might like. And I mentioned in my notes that when I listen to this song, I think about walking through like a haunted house. Like it's horror music to me. I love that they use those little clips.
Yeah, it does have that.
That's something that I forget the name of the album. White Zombie's first album does that. Like it feels like a Rob Zombie soundtrack.
Yeah. A little thing that I really liked about this record was the use of piano.
Yes,
which I wasn't expecting.
Very piano heavy.
Yeah, piano heavy. But the piano, if you put the way that I was thinking about it, I was like, if you took this piano out of context and put it into an album now, people might find it jarring. Mm-hmm. But the fact that the piano is in this in an album from the 90s that you can kind of like, you can put yourself into that headspace, it's very unaltered. Like the piano is quite, like it's not, it doesn't sound to me like real piano. It's very digital.
It's digital piano.
It's digital piano, but the fact that it takes place in an album in the 90s with the themes that it does have and the way that they use the piano, it sounds totally fine, not having any... there's very little reverb, there's very little echo, there's very little digitized effects on the piano. So whenever the piano does come in, it's supposed to be very pronounced, and I really enjoyed that aspect.
Yeah, I think, and I'll get to you guys in a second, but you mentioning that is awesome to me because I think the way Mushroomhead records all of their songs is also very synth heavy, it's very piano heavy, and they use the piano as a lead guitar essentially. And then the actual guitars, the way they record their guitars, it's very distorted, but it almost sounds like they're coming through water. Like it's got like a whoa, whoa, the way they record their guitars. And they let that piano kind of be the forefront, which is such a weird and unique and cool way to make metal songs. So that's why I love Mushroomhead so much, because that's a through line throughout their entire discography for the most part. So.
If this album came out now, I would almost without having your explanation, I would refer to this as like alt metal.
Yeah, it's more like industrial, kind of like a Nine Inch Nails, but heavier.
Right. Yeah, Nine Inch Nails. I got that vibe quite heavily.
It's
throughout.
it's like a post-industrial metal album.
Yeah, lots of clanging. Not necessarily there are some moments where the song takes a whole few seconds to diverge off of its normal pattern to kind of go into these droning sections. Mm-hmm. And it builds for a theme. That's one thing that this album does really well is it has a theme. Whether that theme resonates with everyone exactly how the way they want it to, I really enjoyed that it had a consistent level of tone and theme throughout it.
Sweet. Dill, what'd you think?
I liked it. I thought it was something I could probably work out to.
Yeah.
I like listening to metal music while working out. Sometimes the synth kind of took me out of it. I realize it's got a place for some people, but for me, when it comes to metal, I don't really appreciate the synth. But I really like the song "Never Let It Go" and the way it transitions into "These Filthy Hands." I honestly thought it was the same song. I was like, "How long is this song?"
Yeah, I love "These Filthy Hands" too. By the way,
so it does a really good job of transitioning into new songs, because for me, I was listening to it in the car while I was driving and stuff, and didn't really realize it had moved on to the next song. So I really liked it. But it was one of those things, you can tell it's a 90s album.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like the way it was recorded, the sounds it has. It's not overproduced. So listening to it, you kind of get it kind of just sounds like a live recording almost.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that about it.
Well, they Mushroomhead actually they were on their own. Well, not their own, but they were a small band for a long time, and then they finally got a record deal, I think with Nuclear Blast Records or something like that. I don't remember the exact record label, but I don't like that album. It sounds too produced for Mushroomhead. I like that kind of homegrown, dirty kind of feel to it, and I don't like that in all metal albums, but for them it just works for some reason. I think because it has that kind of horror aesthetic to it, it sounds kind of creaky and crackly, and it's not so super overproduced, which in most music I would say great production value always makes it better. But in this case, that might not necessarily be better, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I agree with you. The way it's recorded gives it like a certain feel. It's stuck in time.
Interject real quick from the Wikipedia article. When I was doing research, this is where it came to my mind. It said, Superbrick was the second album from heavy metal band Mushroomhead. The album was released independently in 96. Most of the songs were later remastered on a different album, which was released by Eclipse Records.
Eclipse, thank you.
Then through Universal Records after some slight modifications and 2 additional songs. This is their first album with Pig Venus on bass.
Oh, okay.
So they actually had a band member named Pig Venus.
Yeah.
So yeah, I knew I wasn't imagining that shit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't know his name was Pig Venus, so that's incredible. That's a fucking great name.
That's an amazing name. That's an Xbox Live name that gets that gets suggested to you when you're signing up for it.
No, that's one of those names.
There's going to be a 12-year-old
like,
going,
this guy.
Pig Venus, big penis.
And I didn't catch these other 3 references, which is interesting. But like I mentioned, the Twin Peaks "Fire Walk with Me" quote or that they use on these wrists. But then they also have quotes from Ed Wood, which is a great film, Johnny Depp film, and then Seven. Apparently,
yep.
There's a quote from Seven somewhere in this.
What's in the box?
I think it was the woman's quote, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I just know they do that in all of their albums. They pick really creepy or weird, like snippets from like horror movies or thrillers or stuff like that, just to kind of set the tone for whatever song's coming. And it's great. I don't know. I just love everything about Mushroomhead. Tommy, what do you think?
So I think this is what I was most excited for this podcast, because I feel like all of us experience music like very, very differently. I can't pinpoint like what song I like the most. I remember listening to like the first and the last song over and over, like back and forth. Also, like Big Brother. I know that might have been like their most popular song off that album?
Bwomp definitely was.
Bwomp was?
Yeah, the first one.
Big Brother, like that was like one of my favorite songs of the whole album.
Yeah, Bwomp was the song that really put them on the map and got them like.
You know what's interesting?
Diesel's currently climbing in my
He's
lap.
got something to say about Bwomp.
Yeah,
him and I both agree.
He has a
Bwomp.
lot to say.
I didn't really care for Bwomp.
No, and Bwomp is the most radically different from the rest of the album. It's more. I think it's more accessible to more people. It's got that kind of like that late '90s, early 2000s new metal feel to it, where it's like there's the two vocalists and one of them's rapping.
It sounds like a Limp Bizkit song
yeah,
at
it
one
does.
point.
It sounds like a proto Limp Bizkit.
That's
song.
what I was just about to say.
But yeah, that's definitely their most popular.
Like what I was about to say is like it kind of starts out like as a Korn album, and then like you kind of get a couple songs that are like growly and metally and shit, and then like it just ends with like a fucking like Gorillaz album almost, like that like rap song at the end. I played this whole album while I was like farting around in Death Stranding with like no sound. Like I had completely moved the sound to like my PA system, like turned it all the way up. So this was just blasting while I was like farting around in Death Stranding, and it was like a really cool experience.
Yeah, I imagine it would be because it's kind of a lonely album.
Yeah, it fit that aesthetic really, really well. Also, I was telling the guys this I think before, but I am almost like 99.9% positive that I played laser tag to this album because
that would
like,
be so wild if you did.
I'm almost like there was like a couple times because there's like some like I swear there's some sampling of like Mortal Kombat music in that. Like,
there might be. It's probably very similar.
So like I remember back when I lived in the Keys, this would have been like in 96, 97, 98. Where I used to go to this laser tag place where these like teenagers like just used to fuck around and play laser tag with us, and they would put their favorite album on, like usually shit like this, and I got exposed to like these metal bands like early on while I was like shooting fucking random people in laser tag, and I was sitting there listening to this, and I had to stop playing the game every once in a while. I was like, did I play laser tag? I'm almost positive I played laser tag.
Well, to be fair, like
album.
the synth in Bwomp sounds very much like the Mortal Kombat thing.
Yeah.
Bwomp, bwomp, bwomp.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it might just be forgotten memory, but I'm wishing upon a star that this is what you listen to while playing laser tag as a child, because it would be an absolutely wild thing. So yeah, just kind of close out on again why I picked this album. I think you guys all kind of nailed it on the head. I think I wrote it rewards your patience. A lot of that's what I like in a lot of metal songs too. Is like from beginning to song to end of song, it's completely different. And the same thing from beginning to album to end of album. It's a completely different album by the time you get to the end of it. So that's one of the things I love about this album and this band and metal in particular. Is just it rewards you for your patience. You're going to have to sit through some stuff that doesn't necessarily sound the greatest. But then when they do that breakdown, you get like that really crunchy, chuggy.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, dude, it's so rewarding. Like when the reprise of Bwomp comes on, it's just it hits you with that kick drum, and it hits you right in the face, and it's awesome.
I was about to say I heard some elements of like breakdown kind of things in that album, and I was like, that's crazy that was happening.
One of my favorite things to think about is like everybody loves like a big drop in like an EDM song now, but metal invented that. Yeah, like the drops, we call them like breakdowns or whatever, or transitions in metal, but yeah, it's the same thing. It's the beat drops out and something like low and chuggy and really cool comes in after that. And I love shit like that.
So what made you pick this album?
Again, for the things I explained, it kind of redefined how I listen to metal. This album is very melodic in a lot of places, and it really defined my love for. Because up until this point, like metal to me was like speed and thrash metal. It's like you got to play as fast as you can, as loud as you can, and it didn't necessarily like take the time to like build a mood and be slow and plodding. And like this showed me that heavy isn't fast and loud necessarily. It's a feeling you get in your bones. Yeah, like this is a heavy album, but it's not like super loud. Like the guitars, like I said, are in the background. Like the drums come forward and the piano comes forward, and that's not necessarily something you think is heavy typically. Yeah. You can feel the weight, and that's the way I define heavy music, is if you can feel the weight of the music. It doesn't necessarily have to even be metal. It can be any genre. It can be heavy. And this album really helped me define what my definition of heavy music is. So that's why I picked it. I think it kind of transformed the way I looked at music a little bit. Plus, when I was growing up, it was a little bit different for me. I grew up in like the peak of Napster. Like I remember like
LimeWire, Napster era.
like I remember when Napster was brand new. My first song I ever downloaded, speaking of Limp Bizkit, was Nookie by Limp Bizkit.
Hell
Fuck yeah.
And I did it on a 56K connection, and it took forever. But that's how I discovered music, was just picking bits and pieces from here and there. So it was hard for me to really pick an album that really was formative for me, because I didn't start really listening to albums again until I was older and out of high school, or like at the tail end of high school is when I started to really appreciate albums in their totality. More, I should say. So I experienced a lot of like bits and pieces of albums, and my older brother helped me with that too. He would introduce me to albums and stuff like that. But my personal journey through music was kind of sporadic and all over the map. So, this one was something I could easily define as like an album that really changed the way I listened to things. So
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this album kind of like throws back to your prompt back last week. Was like I kind of felt like this album told a story.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
and then it loops back around.
Yeah, you could certainly with any album that reprises the first album. Like it's funny because Zach's album does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It feels like you could just continue to listen, or you could listen to it backwards. But yeah,
Exactly.
if it doesn't tell a story, it certainly sets a tonal story.
Yeah.
Like it wants you to be scared. It wants you to think about life. A lot of the lyrics are very smart and very existentially crisisy. So, if it doesn't tell a cohesive story, it certainly tells a story of a mood.
Right.
So we're going to do a little mid-show for every album this week, if you're okay with me hijacking the reins a little bit for a little mid-show for each show.
Yeah, let's do it.
Dillon, hit me with the theme song for what was happening in that year.
For 1996?
Yeah, just give me a little jingle.
Oh, man.
Oh, shoot. What's the theme song to Friends? Or Seinfeld? I can't think.
Come on. Tommy, hit me with the
They're
jingle.
Dancing by Waterfall. Friends.
So no one knows it.
It's gonna be this way.
Pop, 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 pop.
Is that it?
I was
that
looking
it?
for something like, what was happening in that year?
Oh, shit. My
You know what I
bad.
mean? Okay.
Okay. I'll do it. Hold on.
All right, here we go. Dillon, go.
What was happening in that year?
Yeah, there we go. So in 1996, when Super Buick by Mushroomhead came out, such albums like Odelay by Beck in 1996, New Adventures in Hi-Fi, right, by REM came out that same year. Evil Empire by Rage Against the Machine also
great
came
fucking
out that
album.
year. No Code by Pearl Jam was in that year, and Pinkerton by Weezer. From the Muddy Banks, it was like a live album, I think, from Nirvana. It was also in 1996. Just looking through, I don't know how to pronounce this one. The Tool record from 96, the Anima?
Yeah, that's close enough.
Yeah. All Eyes on Me by Tupac Shakur came out that year. It was written by Nas, and Beats, Rhymes, and Life by A Tribe Called Quest was also this year.
Yep.
A couple Outkast records, a Counting Crows record, just giving some... A Marilyn Manson record was also one of the most popular albums in 1996.
Was that? No, I think that was later. But God, The Beautiful People.
Antichrist Superstar is the one that came up on this
Antichrist
list
Superstar, yeah, for sure.
Just to give a little context, I thought that might be fun for some
Yeah.
other
Yeah,
albums
I
that
think
were
it's
coming
cool.
out in the year.
That's
So-
a good year for music. It's a
Yeah,
hell of a
yeah.
year.
It's an interesting year too. Like when I search, it's I put in most popular records of 1996. These are some of the things that came up,
Yeah,
and it's
that's incredible. That's
interesting
so
year.
wide
Yeah.
ranging.
Falling Into You, Celine Dion. There was like vocal pop records too. So
Man,
There's
I
a
could have done
Tupac.
Beck Odelay too. Like,
Yeah.
interesting year, especially for heavy stuff, right? Like a lot of the stuff I just put up.
this was like the
heavy.
metal revival, the beginning of it, because that's when we started getting
Because
the new metal.
Pantera was big then.
Pantera was like on the tail end, but yeah, still big. Korn was getting bigger. Limp Bizkit was a few years away still, but we had the Deftones who were still huge at that time. So it was like this revival of kind of heavy music. Metallica had just done like probably Load or Reload, their garbage albums, but people still loved them.
Yeah.
The Black Album was a few years before that, so it was just kind of like this revival of it was the post grunge. People were tired of whiny Seattle kids, and they wanted something like heavy and real again. That's what Pantera was a reaction to.
Nirvana.
Yeah, like Nirvana. So it's like people wanted something like that could kick you in the teeth again. So, and it was playing on TRL and shit like that. I don't know.
It was a crazy time for
It was
music.
awesome
Yeah.
for me. It was sweet because that's what I fucking liked.
Right.
And everybody was listening to the shit that I liked, and it was awesome. But
So it's funny that you guys all brought that up because I wanted to make this point real quick. The way that I listen to music, I always like kind of like compare it to like a memory. That's why I like love like certain things so much, is because it brings me back to like a certain point. And this album, what it did for me today was bring me back to like a point where I remember like my uncle and my cousin, like I used to spend a lot of summers with them, and they would like introduce me to bands like Iron Maiden and Metallica and Rush and shit like this, like Korn and Mushroom Head, and like those memories. Like I think I might have even like discussed it on other shows, but like they showed me like horror games, and like in a way like music like this. Like this album changed Kevin's life. Albums like this, in some way, kind of changed mine too. Like I'm trying to think of a point. I'm trying to think of like what I was trying to get to.
That was a rejected name for the
I think you made
podcast.
it. I think you were just
Put it on a fucking T-shirt.
even if
Yeah.
we don't think we have similar experiences, we do often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's cool that someone can listen to an album 24 years after it was made, and it's probably been 20 years since you heard that album the first time, and that we all still have a cool experience from it.
Yeah.
I don't think that would happen much with television shows as much as it would today.
I agree.
Music
Yeah.
transcends time more than anything else, in my opinion.
Well, that's the sign of a good band, is how long are they relevant for after they've stopped making music.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of bands that's been going on for a long time, Zach, let's get into yours.
Good segue.
Next.
I'm excited.
Oh boy. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys a little tiny run through about the album that I picked, and then we're going to talk about why I picked it, which I think is going to be the meat of my portion of today's discussion.
Okay.
The album I picked was 1967's Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. If you don't know who the Beatles are,
Stop.
where the
listening.
fuck are you? Wait, what in
Is
space
this
time?
Kyle XY where he doesn't have a belly
what are
button
you
and he's a
talking about?
fucking
What,
alien?
What's that movie that like everyone's like, oh wow, this guy's made all these songs? Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they made a movie where the guy like fell off
Yesterday.
the bike and he
Yes, yeah.
busted out his teeth and was in the hospital and came out.
You're a character in that movie, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is the 8th studio album by the English rock band The Beatles, released on 26th of May in 1967 in the United Kingdom. It was released later in the United States for whatever reason I can't really figure out here. Maybe just release semantics or whatever. It spent 27 weeks at number 1 on the UK albums chart and 15 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard's top LP charts in the United States. It was lauded by critics for its innovations in production, songwriting, and graphic design, for bringing a cultural divide between popular music and high art, and for reflecting the interests of contemporary youth and the counterculture. It won 4 Grammy Awards in '68, including Album of the Year and the very first rock LP to receive the honor. Sgt. Pepper is regarded by musicologists as an early concept album that advanced the use of extended form in popular music while continuing artistic maturation seen on the Beatles' preceding releases. Lots of psychedelica, stylistic influences, many of forms including vaudeville, circus, music hall, avant-garde, Western, and Indian classical music. It is described as one of the first art rock LPs, and a progenitor, or whatever you want to call it, like a preceding tidal wave to what we now call as progressive rock or alternative music.
Can I say something real fast?
Yeah, go for
Can we
it.
talk about how ridiculous subgenres are?
Yeah.
All
Yeah, no,
pop,
I hate it.
rock,
Yeah.
rock alternative, pop, disco.
Is it metal? Is it rock? Is it rap? Is it hip hop or whatever? Is it EDM? That's pretty much it.
Does it have instruments or not?
Sure. I mean, in some respect, I like categorization of
So do I.
music because it almost is like a little history piece. Like, not every album, like you could say that A Hard Day's Night or whatever is a rock album, but that's just its subcategorization. When you start breaking down the album, you start to realize all the different
But they
influence
make
that
up
it had.
new ones. All art rock. I've never heard that besides a Beatles album.
You've never heard art rock
but
before?
No.
Here,
Really?
I agree with you, Dylan, to an extent, because I hate when people are like, "Oh, it's not this super obscure form." Metal is so bad at it. There's so many different subgenres of metal. But what I do like about it is when you hear art rock, you know what that album sounds like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or if you
Yeah.
hear industrial metal, you know what that sounds like. Or at least you have a basic idea of what it sounds like. So I like it for that reason. I like when you're having intelligent, like in-depth discussions of a deeper genre. Like if you want to talk about all the different genres of rock and you wanted to get into that becomes a cool discussion, because you look at like rockabilly and the origins of rock and roll and like how those two are different and why they one inspired the other, and like why blues is, where they all fit in. I think that becomes a cool conversation. But when the people use it to like say one thing is better than another when they're both just the same thing played a little differently, that's when it annoys me. So
Sorry for interrupting.
No. This is a conversational podcast, Dylan. Conversational podcast. This goes in any direction we want.
We were
to
going
go.
to the Peter Griffin, you know what really grinds my gears portion of the podcast. I didn't really want to get stuck in that rabbit hole.
No, that's fine.
I would too.
Well, the thing is that with Sgt.
pop.
Sgt. Pepper, I think that the classification of the album is a big deal, and why I like the album is because it's a little bit of everything, and I think that's why it resonates so much to me. Is that the story that I'll get into in a little bit is this album kind of opened my eyes to a whole genre of music I really didn't know existed, and for coming out in 1968, 67.
I think 67.
67, yeah. For coming out in the UK in 67, and now, in my opinion, I don't know how you guys feel, because you guys, either you listen to it or you've already listened to it in your many years of living on this planet. I think this album is just as relevant today as it was when it came out in 68.
I agree.
I think that the album front to back is cohesive and beautiful, and no other way to say it, a fucking work of art. And so while the term art rock or prog rock or alternative rock or whatever you want to call it, wherever this album stemmed from and whatever that it inspired after this, I really do think that Sgt. Pepper is, in my opinion, the best Beatles album.
Oh boy.
And I know that that's a hot take, a fact that I put down in here. I wrote down a bunch of fun facts because this album is a treasure trove of just really unique and interesting facts.
Yeah.
But one of those being that, back in 2003 and then again in 2005 when Rolling Stone collaborated on the best albums of all time, this made number one both times. Not only for its legacy, but for, just the general quality of the album. It is 12 songs long, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah?
The remastered I'm looking at has 13, but I think Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band is on there twice.
Yeah, it's
so
a reprise.
12, yeah.
9, 10, 11,
It's the shortest
12.
album that we listened to.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
sure. By
clocking in at
almost 10 minutes.
Yeah, like 38 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, somewhere around that mark. There's a lot of like very short songs, including one reprise of Sgt. Pepper, which is like less than 3 minutes long. Very easy listening to, in my opinion, as well. Like for just generally anybody.
Yeah, I think that speaks to, obviously the time it was recorded too, because you wanted your songs to be short so they could be played on the radio. They had to be a certain runtime, so they were radio friendly, and obviously that plays into it. But it doesn't feel like a short album. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like these were made for radio. These were certainly made for the Beatles. I love the Beatles, Zach. So I'm so glad that you picked this.
Hell yeah.
The Beatles are a top 3 band for me, just for their influence alone.
Oh yeah.
Not to mention the great fucking music they made. I think it was last summer. I decided I'm just gonna sit down and listen to the entire discography, just to see what the arc of their career was like, just from beginning to end, and to kind of experience that myself. Because I've listened to them all in like bits and pieces here and there, but I'd never listened to the full discography front to back. And it was really interesting to see how they grow. And I love this album because it's that perfect medium between like Revolver, which is maybe my favorite Beatles album, which is where they start you can see some of the where they start to refine their sound and become a little bit more of an adult, adult band. And it's a good mix between that and Magical Mystery Tour, which is completely off the walls. But I love that fucking album.
I love it.
Magical Mystery Tour, when I first listened to it, I hate it. But now that I'm a little bit older and I can appreciate the weirdness of it, it's fucking awesome.
It's so awesome.
Yeah, Abbey Road's my favorite, but that's just because it's the culmination of everything, and it's just a perfect album in my opinion.
Yeah, here's the thing: is that like no matter what your favorite Beatles album is, I understand.
No, yeah.
It's one of those. It's one of those circumstances where not in everything can I hear someone say like, "Oh, this is my favorite," and I'm like, I totally get it.
I get it.
I totally get it.
But I like Abbey Road for a lot of things that started in Sgt. Pepper, because a lot of the recording techniques that they use in Sgt. Pepper they bring back for Abbey Road. Where they kind of, again, nobody was really running songs together like they did in this album. Like you talked about it on the last album, Dill, where you didn't know when song stopped and the next began. Nobody was doing that before this album. Not really. Not on like super AAA albums. You know what I mean? And it was just so mind blowing to listen to it at the time, and it was so innovative. And it really makes for a cool, like, art house feel to the album, and I really, really love it for that. There's a lot of really cool experimental things they did on the album too. I think on the orchestra hit on A Day in the Life, I think the way I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I think the way they recorded that orchestra hit is they literally just told everyone in this orchestra, I think it was the London Philharmonic, to just play whatever they wanted. And, you know, the Philharmonic is enormous. There's a ton of instruments. There's no way they could all play something that sounds good. But that one clip where it kind of crescendos into that end of that song, that's the one thing they found that sounded good.
The idea to use an orchestra was McCartney's. The 24-bar crescendos feature 40 musicians selected from the London and Royal Philharmonic Orchestras and tasked with filling the space with what one of the recording artists described as, quote, the sound of pure apocalypse, end quote. Martin said that Lennon requested a tremendous build-up from nothing up to something absolutely like the end of the world, end quote.
And it describes that orchestra hit perfectly. It's one of my favorite things in music is that orchestra hit because it's so iconic, and it's, you know, when you hear that it is the Beatles, and it fucking I fucking love it, man. It gives me goosebumps, man, just hearing it. There's so many little bits and pieces of like cool recording things, like in the reprise of Sgt. Pepper, where he does Sgt. Pepper's a one and only Lonely Hearts Club Band. I just love that little like twist on how he sings it. It's just there's so much cool shit in this album, man. I could talk about it for days.
Yeah, on the I want to hear Tommy and Dylan's input on this before I do fact. No. I was just interjecting on your thing here because it's curious, but another quick little fun fact was that if you guys haven't listened to it yet, I highly recommend it. Abbey Road on Spotify. They just released, I think this past year, the discography of the Beatles is confusing when you start to look at digital platforms because they do like re-releases and remixes and like 2019 master, 2017 master, and all this shit. But this past year they released a deluxe quote unquote edition of Abbey Road where the entire bonus features, instead of having remixes or reworkings, it's all of the takes that didn't make it.
Oh, that's
so it's
dope.
the takes of the songs that, you know, have these little imperfections that didn't quite make it. I've heard rumors that they're planning on doing a re-release like that, similar for Sgt. Pepper. But obviously, since this album came out years before Abbey Road, the recording sessions are a little bit more lost to time. There's a little bit less that they can dig up from the memory banks. But highly, like, that's one of the cool things about the Beatles is that, you know, they just went into these sessions, did whatever they wanted to, found what worked, and then just fucking went with it. And, you know, it's cool to imagine this album's, you know, just the little things that are different. Because, yeah, like you said, in the reprise, that one little thing is just like, it's such a cool little added little feature.
And,
you know?
like, Ringo's drums, that it's just so driving.
Yeah.
But one last thing before we move on to you guys. Sorry. It's important to think about how prolific the Beatles were. They were only active for 9 years, and this was their 8th studio album, and they still had 3 more years of activity left. Their touring and recording schedule was fucking bonkers, man. And they did great shit. So it's weird to me to think that it's just such a weird font of creativity that they had for 10 years. Yeah. And if you look at their stuff that they did after it, like Wings isn't as good. Paul McCartney's solo stuff is largely terrible. I like George Harrison's solo stuff, and the stuff that John Lennon was able to do.
And
Ringo's career post Beatles is terrible.
I love Ringo so much.
I love Ringo Starr as a person.
I love Ringo Starr.
He's so funny.
That's what I was about to say. Is Ringo like has some very funny moments on late night TV?
Oh, Ringo's hilarious, dude! Yeah. In all of the movies, Ringo is just. In A Hard Day's Night, the movie, there's a scene where Ringo he's tired of them partying, so he goes and just takes a lonely walk through London, and it's like 5 minutes long. It is so hilariously depressing.
I don't know how they fucking planned it. It's just divine intervention, like the perfect storm. But Ringo is the perfect drummer
for the Beatles.
Yeah. He's so funny, and
he's so good.
I know it's a hot take, but some of my favorite Beatles songs are Ringo songs. Like Octopus's Garden is such a banger. Act Naturally from Help is one of my favorite Beatles songs, maybe top 5. But
bold.
I know. I love Ringo. His creative songwriting is just, it's so bizarre. I love it. Tommy or Dylan, who wants to go first?
You can go ahead, Tom.
I might be the villain in this round.
Okay.
Because I love the Beatles. I love what they've done to music, but like I can't listen to them without like thinking about that they might have covered Paul McCartney's death. Like
I fucking knew you were
Yeah.
going there.
Yeah,
I
like-
should have known.
I have nothing to say about this. I'm going to grab a beer.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
This album has clues to Paul McCartney's death. It's on the cover. There's a bloody driving glove on the little child that's like slooped over in the bushes.
You're better than this, Tommy.
I'm sorry, but I wrote like a super long paper about this, and it's all I could think about anytime I listen to the Beatles. Is
That's
that
funny.
Paul McCartney is dead, and it's all over these albums.
Okay. You heard it here first, or for the millionth time.
Well, here's my take.
I'll
on-
say something nice.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, my take on conspiracy theories is that any conspiracy theory can sound convincing because you can always find things that fit your theory. That's why they exist in the first place. Now, when you think about it logically, that's when it starts to break down. But you always can find stuff that makes it make sense. But then when you actually start to actually really think about it and don't look at just the things that make the theory right,
Yeah.
then conspiracy theories are a bit silly.
True.
But they're fun to think about. And I like one of my favorites is that Avril Lavigne is actually dead.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of compelling evidence to say that Avril Lavigne is actually dead.
Yes,
And I think
absolutely.
it's funny to think about. Do I believe it?
Or those 2 weeks that I really questioned the moon
The
landing.
moon landing, yeah.
I was really hard on about that.
Right, and the reasoning you had was sound, but then when you started looking at not just that reasoning, it
Yeah.
makes a little more sense that it
Yeah.
probably did actually happen, yes.
It almost crumbled me and Zach's friendship. I wish Zach wasn't in right now so we could talk about it.
Those were a strange
He-
few weeks in the store.
Anytime I mention death, he's gone.
Wait, well, oh yeah.
But I did want to say something nice about the
Yeah,
album.
please.
Because what I'll probably mention once we get to like me and Dylan's pick is I love albums that celebrate friendship, and this album has a lot of that element to it, especially with the song "I Get By with a Little Help." From
Oh
My
my
Friends.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, any song that like talks about friends and like how they get by with a little help from them.
Yeah. I don't
have
think
so
they
many
knew
memories
what they
tied to
did when
that.
they wrote that song.
No, I think they knew exactly what they were doing. I think this whole album is very communal because it's about a made up band, and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It's like, let me introduce to you. Like, thanks for coming out. That's what the reprise says. Let me introduce to you Billy Shears. And then it leads into that
Yeah.
kind of slow. This album is a fake concert
Yeah.
with a fake band. And I think it's all about like introducing their fans and bringing them into this kind of weird world that they were all going through. And Sgt. Pepper is like, is a what's the word I'm looking for? Not an analogy.
It's like the conduit in which the story is told through.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's obviously.
It's a
Conduit.
metaphor.
Good
It's a
word.
metaphor
Good word.
for what the band was going through at the time. Sgt. Pepper is a weird offshoot of what the Beatles were. So, and I think the whole album is bringing everybody into that and being communal and like,
Yeah.
and celebrating like, hey, let's take this journey together, everybody.
I love that.
So,
Yeah, for me, I really like the Beatles. I've always really liked the Beatles. I've never really listened to all their albums all the way through. I've always listened to singular songs just because that's how I ended up hearing them. With a little help from my friends, has got to be my favorite song from the Beatles.
Yeah, dude.
Just because what it means and how many times my friends and I at 2 a.m. are blaring that song, drunk as a skunk, just arms around each other. It's our Sweet Caroline. So
The only track on the album that Ringo sings.
really,
Yeah.
Really?
And, yep. The only track on this record that Ringo sings. And it's so hype.
yeah,
Like for, we call certain things hype. We call, Avengers Endgame hype or Rise of Skywalker hype. Like these moments in pop culture that are hype.
Wow.
But the moment that they sing when he introduces Billy Shears and then the guitar riff plays and then Ringo starts singing him in, it's just like, I every time I hear it, it's just a flood of emotions.
well, I can see that as a live show. I can see
Oh,
that
yeah.
big Billy Shears, and then the curtain drops, and it's just one person playing guitar, and it's like this lead into the live show. It's a great album.
yeah.
Gives me
and
goosebumps, man.
for me, the standout songs are songs 2, 3, and 4. With a little help from my friends, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds,
Yep.
and Getting Better. After that, the album, for me personally, kind of trails off. But those 3 songs are pretty much perfection.
That's so funny because those are like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is a standout. It's about LSD, if you didn't know.
Yeah.
But
John Lennon would disagree.
Well, John Lennon again,
he
we've had
picked
this
a weird word assortment.
Yeah. Lennon insisted that it was derived from a pastel drawing by his 4-year-old son Julian, a hallucinatory chapter from Lewis Carroll's 1871 novel Through the Looking Glass. A favorite of Lennon's inspired the song's atmosphere. Here's
what we've talked about before, though, is that once an artist lets his artwork go, it becomes whatever the public wants it to be, and I choose to believe it's about LSD. And that is supported heavily by the Yellow Submarine movie, and that's the trippiest part of the movie.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that for a minute?
We can.
Oh, I love Yellow Submarine, man. So much.
But my favorite parts of the album are like For the Benefit of Mr. Kite and Lovely Rita, and like those are my favorite parts of the album, where it just gets kind of weird and very, like Zach said in the opening, very vaudeville-y. Being For the Benefit of Mr. Kite is just such a goofy romp. Like the things that they're describing are so cool.
For the Benefit of Mr. Kite is an interesting one too, because the fun fact about this, and you might know this, is that Lennon had this this melody worked out for this song, but he didn't know what the lyrics were, and he literally, aside from a few changes to help make the rhymes work and to keep lyrics on the tempo of the beat that he had wrote for the song, he transcribed the lyrics almost identically from a old circus poster that he had hanging in the recording studio. So, and there's photos of this you can go up and look up, and the entire thing is like from the top to the bottom. There's no like, it's like featuring tonight, blah 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 blah, all this stuff. It's like he didn't change hardly anything except for a few names to make it work in the tempo.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Did you have anything else to say before I get into my like bullet point thing here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
One more thing.
Hit it, Tommy.
Not on this album, but "I Am the Walrus" is like one of the greatest Beatles songs.
Yep, it's a good one.
Great song.
Just wanted to point that out.
So yeah, we could talk about. I mean, this is an album that I could gush upon for a long time. But to keep my part of the show succinct, before we get into Tommy and Dillon, the reason I chose this album was difficult for me. It took me a little bit of time to put my pick on the Google Docs sheet that we had running. And the reason was because when Dillon brought this prompt up, I had an album, maybe even 2 or 3 or 4, that came to mind about like what album changed my life. And, you know, Tommy and I, we had a conversation about this. Kevin and I, we had a conversation about this. But music, more than anything else, is maybe the most personal art for me. Mm-hmm. And Kevin put it in a great way the last time we talked, because he was like, it's one of the only things that you really experience by yourself for the most part. Concerts being their own unique beast, but for the most part, music is something that I enjoy on my own and dissect on my own. And most of the album that I would, you know, the album I have in my mind of the thing that changed my life is so personal to me. I don't know if I wanted you guys to listen to it, and I don't know if I wanted to talk about it. Because not only is it like, you know, I have emotional stories attached to the album, it's like the example I use for both these guys is that if someone came into the room right now and told me that La La Land is the worst piece of trash they ever saw, I'd be like, all right, whatever. And I'd wave it off. But if somebody came in and like personally dissed or, you know, made fun of an album that I found really near and dear to me, it would hurt me quite a bit. And, you know, I like to think that I can shrug a lot of stuff off in the art and entertainment world, but music in particular is really difficult for me. So this isn't an album that necessarily changed my entire life. It did help me build a respect for what we call now as alt rock, which is maybe if I had to pick a favorite genre, I like alternative rock. I like indie synth wave, electronic music, you know, bizarre stuff. And this album really like put into motion. This album showed in the time that you could do this stuff and still be a top of the charts seller. And that's why we have so many great, weird, and influential artists these days. And so for that reason, that's why I picked Sgt. Pepper's, because even though it may not be the album that changed my life, it's an album that informed a lot of the albums that changed my life. And so that's basically the reason why I picked this, is that, you know, the Beatles are fun to discuss and everyone had an input, which I really, really loved. But, you know, that's why I went with this one. So
okay.
In a safe place, we don't have to discuss it any further. We don't even have to go listen to it. Give us like a clue on what you might have brung to the table. you weren't scared.
I don't know. It's all right, Tommy.
I want to know. We might all love it. You never know.
I think it's fine that I kind of like the mystery. Of
I
it.
like
Yeah,
it.
I do
Yeah,
too.
yeah, you're right.
I want to pry. I so want to pry, but I want to respect it because music is one of those things that's super personal.
It's intensely
Yeah.
personal.
Tommy and I were talking on the way back from the restaurant. Like, music was one of those things to convey emotion back when you couldn't sort it out yourself. And a lot of the stuff him and I agree on goes all the way back to junior high when you're first dedicating songs to girlfriends and you're feeling all these things for the first time and hearing someone talk about it. And like, I don't know, music does it in a way. If you go, hey, watch this random episode of a TV show, it doesn't work the same way as
it doesn't.
listen to track 4 on this album and I'm going to burn it on a CD for you. And you're going to find out how much I really like you without me having to tell you.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think music is great in that way, where it is so personal, whether you want it to be or not. It just, you got that emotional connection to it no matter what.
And the thing is that like in the prompt too, like with the show was listen to each other's albums and discuss them.
Yeah.
And even though we're being very surface level to make sure that we're coming in a good time for the podcast, it's like, man, I don't necessarily know if I wanted to put you guys through my favorite album because I know that there are songs on there that not everyone loves. So, like, I love them for very selfish reasons.
Yeah.
And not reasons that I really want to discuss, like in an open, because the thing is that like I studied movies. I feel like I know movies. I can explain to you why I think this thing, like a movie is well written or directed or acted or whatever. But for music, I can't really explain why I like it. I just do.
Yeah.
And so I
It's
can't
an
really argue it.
Music
you know?
is an emotional thing, I think.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to a song and you're like, the chances you listen to that song again are very slim unless it's in a full album that you really enjoy. So if music evokes emotion, which we've all kind of established that I'm an emotional person, that's why I cling to music so much, is that you can find new music all the time that just makes you feel different. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, for sure.
And it gets harder and harder to do the older you get, I think. So, Thomas,
Yeah, I was
you
about to
are
say.
going to go number 3. Zach, do you have anything more about Sgt. Pepper's?
No, I think my bullet point would be if you've never listened to the album, if you enjoyed any of this discussion, seek it out. It's thank fucking Christ that
They're finally on Spotify.
because a talking point I had was like, do you guys remember when it was a big deal that Apple had the distributing rights to the Beatles?
Yep,
Like,
yep.
I remember that being on TV commercials, right? But now you can go onto Spotify and look for the entire discography.
Yeah, that crushed me for the longest time. 'Cause
Yeah,
if
same.
you know anything about me, you know that I hate Apple products, and I've never used one, and I never will, probably more than likely. So not being able to listen to one of my favorite bands of all time for the longest time, unless I did it illegally or pulled out my old CDs, sucked for the longest time. So
Yeah, I do think that there's a Beatles song out there for everybody, even if you only like one. Like, they did such a wide variety of shit that it's like impossible. I think it's impossible to find at least one song that you can enjoy at least a little bit.
And here would be my part, like advice to anybody who's having trouble like picking an album or finding something. Watch the movies that they made. Hard Day's Night is hilarious. Help is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Help is my favorite Beatles movie.
Yeah, oh god, it's so funny. And then Yellow Submarine, I watched that movie once a day. I felt like when I was a kid, it's just it's awesome. Like I named my car in high school after the main villains in that. In
Blue Meanies.
The Blue Meanie.
That movie is so ahead of its time
It's great.
too, man.
It's great.
Like,
Absolutely.
I don't know if any theater does it, like any indie art house theater, but if
Every
they
now
were
and
ever
again
to
they will.
show like a midnight showing of that shit, I would go in a heartbeat.
They did it a couple years ago and I missed it because they were doing it up, I think, at that theater in Columbus you go to, Zach.
Gateway. Shout out,
think so.
bless up to Gateway. My Lord and
But
Savior.
they did have a 2-night screening of Yellow Submarine and I missed it and I'm so
Be
pissed
awesome.
at myself because if you're having trouble finding an entry point, like Yellow Submarine or Help probably would be the two easiest, like those movies, because they have the music in them, but you also get to see like the funny side of the Beatles, and they're legitimately good and funny movies. So
And they move at a breakneck
They do.
pace too. It's
They're
like
very short.
it's like a music video. Like the whole Help movie is a music video. It just has these little like skits in between that lead from song to song. So easy to get through. Like it's less than I think it's like an hour and 10 minutes. It's so easy to watch. It's great.
You want to hit us some 1967 facts before we move on?
1967 facts.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well,
do we have to sing it?
You need to sing me the theme song. Do you remember it, Dylan?
No.
What?
What happened in that year?
So in 1967, along with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band from the Beatles, Are You Experienced from the Jimi Hendrix Experience was released. The Velvet Underground released their debut record. The Piper at the Gates of Something from Pink Floyd released that year. The same year that Sgt. Pepper came out, the Beatles also released Magical Mystery Tour. In the same year.
Damn.
Between the Buttons by the Rolling Stones came out that year. A couple Rolling Stones album, actually. The Who Sell Out came out this year. I Never Loved a Man, something by Aretha Franklin came out that year. I mean, this is a historic year. Like a Bob Dylan record came out this year. The second Beach Boys record came out this year. Just a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff that not everybody's going to know the titles to.
Are You Experienced was in my like top 25 that I was thinking about doing because Jimi Hendrix changed the way I listen to music. So
Yeah.
So number 3, Thomas Beccaro.
Yes. Do you want me to just throw out my title?
Yeah, throw out your title.
Throwing it out.
You can take it wherever you want to go.
Yeah, so I kind of want to start out. I didn't know I would start it out this way, but I thought that that it was a really cool thing to experience today. I was able to not show because I think he had listened to it before, but I had got to listen to my album that I picked with Zach this morning, like before we opened the store, and to watch him like kind of groove to it as we opened made me feel like super, super good. So I picked a Fever You Can't Sweat Out by Panic at the Disco. It was their debut studio album. What did I say?
Panic
at the disco.
Panic at the Disco. Diesel just shot his head up.
Sent Diesel into a panic.
This band was super young. They were like just had graduated high school and they recorded this album, discovered by Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy, which I was a huge fan of at the time as well.
Yeah.
I believe it was Decade Dance and Fueled by Ramen, who was the labels
Record
that picked
label.
them up. Yeah,
Right.
that picked them up. I don't want to get into why this is my favorite album yet because I want to hear from you guys.
Okay.
But this album makes me feel things, and I had trouble picking what my favorite one was. But the night that you kind of like hinted that we would pick this, it's what came to mind at first. So I just went with my heart because
Yeah,
I was
that's what I did as well.
yeah, because I was like, all week I was like, should I pick something that like makes me look cool? Like, should I pick something that's like hard, like that I used to like mosh to in the pit? Like, so these guys like, oh man, he was like in the fucking pit doing crazy shit.
We know
like,
you're dope, Tommy.
Yeah,
You're a full time.
like,
Yeah, we
I
know
was,
Tommy's
like,
dope.
I was like, I'm
Look at
just
those
Constantly
tattoos.
doubting Tommy's ability.
Yeah, I'm fucking picking something that is like my shit. This
Yeah.
is my shit. I love this album so much. It's probably my favorite album, and I love it. So,
I think we should start with Kev because Kev probably listened to it the least amount of all of us.
Yeah, for sure. Let me explain because this came out in 2005, right?
Yeah.
So I was a senior in high school, and by that time, I think I talked to you guys about this earlier. I was in '96. I was listening to Mushroom Head. So by a decade on, I'm getting into like death metal and just really hardcore, like just strange shit. And like when I saw like all these bands coming out at the time, like Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco, and they all kind of sounded the same to me at the time. Now, getting on, I know that's not the case. But for me, I was like, I don't want to listen to this pussy shit. Look at this guy with his eyeliner and his dumb fucking hair. I hated
tight-
They're all dressed
I
like
hated
they're at a carnival.
Yes, I hated the emo movement. I hated it so much. But now going back on it, listening to this album, I was surprised at how much of the album I remembered. Yeah. And I do like it. I rediscovered Brendan Urie at a later date, like actually just a couple years ago, with Death of the Bachelor, and I love that song, and I love Brendan Urie. I think he's one of the most talented vocalists that's ever recorded.
absolutely.
And so going back and listening to this old stuff again, I like his newer stuff better. I think he's grown so much as an artist.
I actually agree.
He's grown a ton since this album.
As
Yeah.
a whole.
Yeah.
But just because, like, this kind of music aged, but not necessarily in a bad way, but it's like he's gotten more in depth with his recording tactics.
Yes.
We'll
Yes.
talk about, but it's like a lot of this first record were not like, it was like a group effort, but the older he got, the more he got into production, the better his record sounded, because I think he had more of an input.
He refined his vocal style too. He kind of played around with what he could do well and really focused in on that and kind of honed his sharp edges, so looking back now, I wish I would have listened to more Panic when I was younger so I could have a better appreciation of Brendan Urie's full scope of his career. So yeah, I didn't hate the album. This is the first time I listened to it front to back. I didn't
awesome.
hate it.
So awesome.
It's fine, and it's still I don't like it for a lot of the same reasons I didn't like it back then. To me, it feels like a lot of the emo stuff that came out. It was kind of like, look how smart I am. Look how many big words I can fit into the title of this song title.
Yes.
It's like song titles are like The Beast in a top hat at the gown at midnight, and that's like
the only difference between Martyrdom and Suicide is press coverage.
Yeah, that is a fucking emo title song, and I hate false pretension like that. It's like I hate it so much, but it doesn't mean that the music is bad necessarily. I just, when I hear some of the lyrics, I'm like, "Fuck you, dude." Like, get over yourself.
Yeah, it's just a little too cerebral.
It's a little too. It's not. It's like fake cerebral though.
Yeah.
Because there are bands like the Mars Volta and stuff like that where it's super cerebral, but it doesn't feel fake.
Yeah.
But these kids were super young.
But they're
at the time.
They're young. They're trying to impress.
Yeah, it's
fueled
like,
by ramen.
Yeah.
They're 17-year-olds recording in a studio, and they're like
in front of Pete Wentz, probably.
Yeah, Pete Wentz is like,
with
you
his
better
fucking
make your
white belt.
Pete Wentz is like, you better make this title fucking long. Don't make me look bad.
So like, it's that false.
There better be one title with at least 10 words, and you ain't leaving this fucking studio.
I need a colon and a semicolon in this title somehow.
But
Brendan Urie's like, but I
go
can sing like Freddie Mercury, man. Like, I have a
he's
crazy
like, nope,
range.
we're at an auto tune.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I don't hate the album, but I did hate a lot of the things that movement was about.
It's very tropey.
Yeah, it's very tropey. It's very stuck in time, and I think it was reflective of the way teenagers were feeling at the time. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like,
but damn it, did it work?
Tommy and I were 13 at the time.
yeah,
that this album
exactly.
came out.
So
Yeah.
this was perfect for you guys. I was going into college at the time, so I was a little bit past this.
Yeah.
But if this could come out a few years earlier, I could see myself really like, because I loved Limp Bizkit, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the same kind of like angsty bullshit, but it was just
They were living up a trope as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I don't know. I was going somewhere with that. But
Sorry, I
no,
interrupted.
it's okay. Yeah, again, I didn't hate it. I love Brendan Urie now, so yeah, Panic is dope.
What's your thoughts on I Write Sins? Because that's a song that still plays on the radio.
I love that. I still love that song. I do love that song.
It's not my favorite off the album, obviously, because it's the most popular.
Yeah, but it is my favorite.
You
off
have
the
to
album
respect
because
it.
I like it so
Yeah,
much. Like the beginning of that song is just so
Boom, 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 boom,
like,
boom,
you know what that
boom,
song is.
boom. It's so
Yeah.
iconic, man. It's so iconic. Like,
Well,
freaking.
Yeah, and what I just remembered listening today with you is that I haven't listened to that album front to back in years, but I totally, I guess it was just a black spot in my memory, but I forgot that song was part of a double song. Like that the song right before it leads directly into
Exactly.
I Don't
Yeah.
Write Sins. And I was like, oh yeah, shit. Because at the very end of that what I like is that any good song that leads into the next one kind of sprinkles in themes or a thematic element that ties the two. Songs that lead into one another without having anything to do with each other infuriate me. It's because it's like, why have this thematic bridge if there's no purpose for these songs coexisting? But the song before it sprinkles those elements in. So when you get to the very beginning chords of I Don't Write Sins.
Yeah.
Oh, it hits. It hits for sure. Like it definitely works 100%.
You ready for me to go?
Yeah,
I'm ready. It takes me back to a place in time. Listening to it now as a 27-year-old male, it is very curious. Some of the things they did. Auto tuning, Brendan Urie almost seems like a fucking sin.
It does.
He's a sin. He's too good for it.
But maybe when he was 17 or 18, some of those notes he couldn't hit as well. So you kind of have to factor in that kind of stuff.
That's true.
The thematic elements, I'm sure Tommy will get to this in a little bit. Brendan Urie wasn't writing these songs back then. There was someone else writing these songs, and I think that's why there's such a fake sense of trying to prove your intelligence that you don't see later on with Panic at the Disco. My buddy Daniel Cunningham burnt this for me, and so I'd only heard some of the hot tracks off it. So I hadn't heard this album until about 6 or 7 years ago, and I think it. When I first heard it, I was really excited about what Zach said. I didn't know there was a song that led into I Write Sins, and it almost seems like those should be one. That should be one song. If you're going to listen to I Write Sins, you should be able to listen to, but it's better if you do. But the song is, or the whole album as a whole is not without its faults, but I think it still gets the junk to tingle a little bit. So I love it.
Yeah, I mean, me, even the most critical person of this type of music, I still like listening to it. Like, I have an appreciation for it now that I'm not a piece of shit 18-year-old kid that's like, oh, that's fucking stupid. I don't want to listen to that.
It's not as cool to hate things anymore.
Yeah, it's not as cool. It's more fun to look at things critically and appreciate them for what they do well, and then kind of pick apart things that I don't necessarily like as well. So, yeah, I mean, great pick, Tommy. Honestly, because I think it's. If I had to pick an album for that year, it would probably be that one, to be perfectly honest with you. Because that shit was fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And I fucking hated every second of it.
I could see those like band t-shirts and everything. Like that, just the fucking, that shit plastered all over.
You know what?
All over.
The biggest thing about this album and this band in particular is it makes me think of something. It reminds me of something. I can just see swooped bangs.
That's what I wanted.
You know what I mean? I can see swooped bangs and eyeliner when I hear this shit, and that is a testament to this song because it brings me back to a moment in time, or this album.
Swooped Bangs is a good band name.
Swooped Bangs.
If we're gonna make
that should have been our podcast name.
Odds
Swooped
Punk
Bangs.
Revival.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Could that be the name of this episode? Swooped Bangs.
I also like the carnival themes.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah.
They do it in this album, and they do it in Vices and Virtues, which is probably my favorite Panic album. If you guys haven't listened,
I agree.
It's
because
so funny you bring that up.
It's like a fever you can't sweat out, but like 6 years later, and they're all grown up. I think it's the perfection of a fever you can't sweat out.
Yeah.
It does the good interludes and stuff like that, but not to overstep my boundaries on Panic, but Vices and Virtues, I think is, if we didn't have that, we might not look at this as fondly as we do.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I agree. Yeah.
You want to go, Zach?
Yeah. I mean, I love Panic at the Disco. Although they're not one of those bands that I listen to on a regular basis. Whenever one of their songs pops up on my shuffle, I'm always like, oh yeah, hell yeah, Panic. Yeah, I remember this stuff. I still do think that the highlight moment of this album is like, because I Write Sins Not Tragedies is track 6.
Let me look.
It's somewhere right in the middle.
It's
or
right
towards the
in
end.
the middle.
It's 10.
Track 10.
Yeah, track 10.
It's
Okay.
like more towards the end.
So then that makes my point even better, is that like this whole album to me feels like the build up to that explosion.
Yeah.
And this album would not be anywhere. I know it sounds cliche to say like the hot single from the record is like what makes the album, but like the theme of this album feels like it releases that all of its energy and its breaking point at that track.
Well, yeah.
And that's that song, and what Tommy and I were talking about this morning is that like it's just so crazy to me how influential that track is, and especially in a pop culture sense, like not just from what people think about Panic at the Disco, but also like you go to any fucking bar in Cincinnati, maybe anywhere in the United. I heard this song when I was in Italy. Right?
No way.
When I went to a karaoke bar in Florence, Italy, this song was one of the karaoke songs that people were singing, and the whole crowd was into it. People know this song. This song has transcended boundaries. This song has gone past the United States. This is the I Write Sins Not Tragedies is really just a special song, and you can't really you can debate what doesn't make it special, but it just is. It from the very beginning. The first chords, the way that it's structured, the intensity in his voice during the chorus, the build up to the chorus, how untraditional it is in terms of writing. I think that the most ingenious thing about this album is the way that it builds to that song, and I love it for that.
No, I agree. I think that it being towards the end, back half of the album is pretty poignant, because I think that's how a good album should be. I think song 10 or 11 or 12 is where the best song in the album should be. Because we joked about this earlier, but I think a good album should be like sex, right? You should have your little foreplay. They should have the exciting stuff leading up to a climax, and then like the kind of cool down afterwards. I think that's the act leading up to it is always a little bit longer than, before you roll over and go to sleep kind of thing. You know what I mean?
That's a beautiful sentence.
No, but I mean, really, if you think
apt.
about it, that's how it should go. It should be this, leading to a climax, and then you're like, man, that was great. Okay, good night.
Yeah. All right, let's do it again.
Yeah, right.
All right, now
Track
get out.
one.
Run her back. But yeah, no, it's I think that's incredibly apt and a good observation, Zach. I think you're right, because I think a lot of good albums will follow that same kind of formula. So
Yeah, and I just a tiny little point with that. Yes, I do think that the best album should be like the best song should be like the crescendo of emotion, the piece of the album. There's always a centerpiece to every album, but I do think that the runner up and something that also is very important is the first or second track. If there's an intro or a second track, something that sets the tone for what you're about to listen to is also very important. So
that's when you say, "Hey, let's do anal."
Jesus Christ!
And it's like, no,
Here's a hidden track.
then you try to pop it in at like track 6, and like, no, stop it, and then it's
Then you got to go back to track
Then you
one. Dylan, you want to hit me with that theme song?
What happened that year?
And Tommy, you can keep going, but I felt like this is a good point to jump.
I like
in.
this aspect of the show.
The segment,
I like
yeah.
it.
In 2005, other famous albums that came out that year are "Late Registration" by Kanye West,
Oh,
great,
"Demon Days" by Gorillaz.
great.
An album that's very special to me is "Talk" by Sigur Rós, the instrumental band from Iceland.
Yeah.
"Curtain Call," the hits from Eminem, came out in 2005. That's like a compilation.
Yeah,
record,
it's
though,
just
right?
it's like a greatest hits thing. It's fine.
Sufjan Stevens, Illinois, came out this year. Dylan, that's a band for you, right?
Who?
Sufjan Stevens? Weren't you into him?
Nah.
Oh, really? Okay, never mind. Before the Dawn Heals Us by M83. I'm Wide Awake and It's Morning by Bright Eyes came out this year.
Again,
Oh, Bright Eyes.
fuck that album title.
I'm
Nah.
Wide Awake, It's Morning?
It's so stupid.
Yeah,
Oh, I love that.
Bright Eyes really wanted you to know how smart they
yeah,
were.
it's fuck off.
All the Right Reasons by Nickelback came out this year.
Look at this graph.
Every time I do, it makes me photograph.
Look at Zach Braff. I love that.
The Massacre by 50 Cent came out this year. Plans by Death Cab for Cutie came out this year.
Oh, Death Cab 2.
What a wild
Death Cab is great. I love Death Cab. With Teeth by 9 Inch Nails came out. Some other big ones.
Was that
on
50
here,
Cent's
yeah.
first album?
I don't
The
think
Massacre?
so.
No, it definitely
no.
was not.
I think was it like Bulletproof or something? Was his first album?
Something like
It definitely was not.
Was there any song you heard more growing up than "Into Club" by 50 Cent?
I mean, it was
Everybody-
a lot. It was everywhere.
It was It was like spring break. Every time my family
50
went
Cent
anywhere.
albums kind of divide up my high school career, because his first one came out like early high school, and then the second one came out with like Candy Shop and shit like that.
Oh yeah.
Take it to the candy shop. Oh, dude, yeah.
I'll let you
So that like
live.
defines my junior and senior year, and then like in the club,
In the
or
club.
whatever the fuck that
In
song
the
is called.
club.
Yeah,
Get Rich or Die Trying. Was his
Okay,
first,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
his first album.
and then
2003,
Bulletproof was second.
and then The Massacre was the second.
The Massacre was
Okay.
second.
So Tommy, what else you got for a fever you can't sweat out?
My heart is absolutely just pounding out of my chest. This is exactly the kind of reaction I wanted from you guys and the conversation I wanted to have. So for me, the reason this album was like such a, I think like a pivotal point. Like I said in the beginning, I experience music in a way that I associate memories to them. I don't really criticize music. This might be a trash album. I know it's not a trash album.
It's not.
It's
But-
not. No, it's not.
But
It's not a trash album.
but though I can pop this album on and literally use this as a time machine to transport back to a point where like I was starting to find myself. Like this was like a segue into like other bands and like meeting other people, kind of breaking out of like my shell. Like I was talking to Dylan on the way here, and I compared like we were talking about when you share music with people, you're like, do you like this music? Because if you like this music, you'll like me. Like kind of thing.
you feel like it's a reflection of yourself.
Like I really, really like this music. It's kind of like my soul. So
Yeah.
and it goes back to your point.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
you know, you're kind of afraid to share that with people sometimes, and it's a huge like thing to do. This album specifically transports me to a place where like I would pop on fuse in the morning and watch like multiple music videos to get ready to before like high school, middle school, whatever. Like car rides, getting like my license. This album makes me think of like that segue of like in 2009, like 4 years later or so, falling in love, meeting my wife, like we were both like into this world at the same time, and like this kind of led us into meeting and shit. So I don't know. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to me that you guys like could look at it in a critical way and like analyze it for me, because you guys analyzed it in all the ways I wish I could say. But it's like Zach said, it's like you just fucking like it. Like you like it and you don't know why. And yeah, thank you guys.
Well, make sure when Aaron listens to this that it. Just because I didn't like it at the time.
No.
I think I just spent like 10 minutes shitting on this.
I thought you did it.
And you're like,
You
oh
did
yeah,
not shit on it.
Me and my wife met because we were both into like this whole thing going on. I'm like, fuck that thing. I fucking hated it. And so I hope she doesn't dislike me because of it.
Fuck Kevin. No, I don't feel like you shit on it at all.
Okay, good.
But yeah, dude, I'm stoked. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to dive into this next album.
The last one is mine. Mine is Say Anything, their album called Is a Real Boy. It's from 2004. Had Kevin, Zach, have you guys
you guys
listened to it before?
Even heard of this band or this album or anything?
No fucking way.
Zach,
No way, dude.
had you listened to it?
I've not listened. Yesterday was my first time listening to this album front to back, but
Okay.
I have heard many a Say Anything song.
Okay.
When I was growing
So
up.
you've listened to the two big ones on the album, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What are the two big ones? Because I have no exposure.
The two
to this
big
whatsoever.
ones.
Alive with the Glory of
Yeah.
Love.
Yep.
Yes.
And then
Probably, I don't know the other big one.
Hold on. No, this is your album. I don't want to take away.
No, you tell me
I'm
what the
just so
big ones
excited.
is, because I've always listened to it as a full album, so I don't know the I know Alive with the Glory of Love was on Scrubs.
That's-
It was like a
When
really
I watch you, I want to do you.
That's one of
Yeah.
the first. That's one of the first. Seeing that episode of Scrubs when it was happening was like, I was like, they're using this song. All right, here we
Yeah.
go. Like, because that was a song that's not a pop radio song.
No.
Like, Alive with the Glory of Love is like a middle track on this record that happens to be. It's spoilers. It's my highlight song of the album.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Right.
It has great melody, a strong mood, crisp instrumentalization. Like it takes the most diverging path from the rest of the album.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like, this is the I Write Sins, Not Tragedies. This is its highlight moment. It just happens to happen in the middle of the album as opposed to like closer towards the end.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. So Kevin, you hadn't heard it?
I had no exposure. So really, to me, honestly, when I listen to something new for the first time, I want to listen to it a couple times through. So
Yeah.
I didn't get the chance to do. I listened to it once, so I didn't feel like I got the fullness of it. But what I got out of it in my initial listen was it's extremely interesting and very, very dirty.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Okay. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which I'll get to.
Yeah, and it's just I was listening to it, I was like, what the fuck did he just say? And I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
So, okay.
These lyrics don't
You
fit
got me
this
excited.
mood at all. And
Which
I'm like,
that's like one of the second most popular songs is the Wow I Can Get Sexual Too.
Okay,
the phone ringing.
that wasn't on what I included. That's like on the
That's a
bonus.
bonus.
It's a
track,
bonus
yeah.
track.
So, when I first heard this album, I was either freshman or sophomore. I was playing baseball with some guys that are a little bit older than me, and a lot of the guys that I was playing baseball with were into a lot of rap. So I'm one of the few people that I didn't really give a crap about rap at the time. So some guys that were a little bit older than me were like, "Oh, have you ever listened to Say Anything?" And me, I was kind of stuck in my little trope of like Boys Like Girls and Mayday Parade and all the kind of like super emo, Why Doesn't She Love Me kind of bands.
Yes.
And my buddy was like, "Hey, I'm going to burn you this album and I'll bring it to you on practice on Monday." So he gives it to me and I listen to it and I'm like, I was 15 or 16. I was like, what in the fuck is this?
Yeah.
So I listened to it over and over and over again. And to this day, I still change my mind about it every time I listen to it. It is one of the most wild things I've ever listened to when it comes to an album staying concise with its with its themes, but at the same time, it goes a million different directions.
It really
and
does.
The most interesting thing about it was the guy Max Bemis, who is the primary songwriter. He did all the instruments except the drums. You can tell his drive in the album. He was only 19 years old when he wrote it.
Wow.
So he's a horny little teenager.
That's funny, because that's what I was going to say. This sounds like somebody like at E-Bombs World wrote this album.
He
You know what I mean?
He moved from LA to Brooklyn, and it was him, a producer, and the drummer just holed up in this apartment in Brooklyn, and this is what they came out with. He went in with the idea of like wanting to do like a rock opera, and you can kind of feel it sometimes with its like elements sometimes where it kind of wants to have this big sense of grandeur, but at the same time, at the core of it, it's still very indie. It's, I don't know, there's so many things I love about it. So I'll let you guys go first before I talk too much about it. We'll start with Zach, because Zach met my gaze first.
I always meet your gaze, Dylan. Always. I having heard a few of these songs before when I was into these sorts of groups back in the day, I knew the big songs from Say Anything, but this is an album that I guess just missed me all the way through. But there were a few tracks on second listen through last night while I was, vibing to this shit. I was definitely taken back to a time where I was like, oh yeah, I remember this hook, or oh, I remember this playing when I was in this store or whatever. Because I feel like Say Anything hit
It was
a
a-
specific.
It was like
time?
MTV, like TRL. Somehow it made it to like more popular. Like Alive with the Glory of Love was on TRL for like 15 weeks straight.
Do you remember those fucking jukeboxes that were like stuck in the wall at Hollister? Say Anything used to play on that. Those fucking little
Wow.
jukebox things.
I do remember that. Wow.
So you could go up and like press the songs you wanted to hear. I'd always go in and like be like play all the Say Anything songs because they were so dirty.
Yeah.
And like, and I was like, hey, and I like run out of Hollister real quick.
Yeah.
Well, I said my big piece on the Alive with the Glory of Love being the highlight moment of the record for me. Not only because, I remember listening, this is the Say Anything song I remember listening to the most when I was a kid. I also remember it being the cool thing that popped up in media. So it came on in Scrubs. I feel like it must have been in a couple other television shows or maybe a movie back then, because I remember the hook of that song being in a lot. Just hearing that around the world.
If you guys have never listened to Alive with the Glory of Love, go ahead and listen to it. It's only like 3 minutes of your time.
It's
But
easy listening.
It's basically the theme of the song is that he's in the Holocaust and all he wants to do is fuck this chick and protect her at all costs. And it's such a bizarre song for someone to write. But at the same time, it's still kind of sweet. You know what?
This whole album is like a fever dream to me, because I spent the entire album like, what the fuck is he talking about? And like I could hear what was coming in through my ears and I could process it in time. Because like you said, it is easy listening. But I'm like, what the?
Maybe I listened to it a little differently.
Agog.
But when my buddy gave it to me, he said, just to let you know, this guy's bipolar, and him making this album kind of made him go through like a mental breakdown. And he handed it to me and goes, here you go. And I was like, what?
That's dope.
You can literally,
Yeah. So, I mean, you can hear it in some of the, like, the last song. That's why I love it being the last song. Admit It. Wow.
It's a good track.
Yeah. So, okay. Sorry, Zach. Go ahead. I don't want to gush too much.
No. The only other thing I was going to say is that, Admit It is an interesting closer. I think while it's not like, I'll admit it. Haha.
Laugh track. We need one.
This album to me is not one of my favorites, but I do love the tone that it sets. And I think that the last two tracks are perfect album closers, because I Want to Know Your Plans is my second favorite from the album, because it takes a break from, there's a lot of, it's indicative of the time. There's a lot of heavy drums, heavy guitar, lots of power chords, lots of let's jam for 2 minutes of like instrumental. You can imagine this is the part where the mosh opens, in the concert. But then it gets to I Want to Know Your Plans, where it's more laid back. It's acoustic. There's like a strong melody and a repeat of the chorus, which you don't really get throughout most of the album. And it really slows down the mood. And then when you get to Admit It, it takes like, that spoken word rap rock sort of vibe and ends the album on like a political statement, kind of pseudo political statement, very mentally
I imagine
challenged.
someone just looking in the mirror and fucking yelling at themselves.
Right.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so I dug Alive with the Glory of Love for being a climax, and then the last two tracks I think really set a great mood to finish it out. And so
Yeah.
I thank you for making me listen to this, because it was a trip down memory lane, but it was also I gained an appreciation for his structure of the album and the last two songs especially.
Yeah. Tommy?
Yes. So I was very, very excited to throw this on today. I asked Zach, I was like, hey, what was Dillon's album today? And he was like, oh, it was Is a Real Boy by Say Anything. And I was like, that's one of my favorite albums of all time. I love that album. I threw that baby on the way to school today and just jammed. Like, almost didn't want to leave my car. I think it ends it ends. I think it starts so strongly. Like, that first couple songs is like so dope, and then you get Alive, and then I always listen to this album with the bonus track, so I've never known it any differently. So like, I always like get excited. It's like with the bonus tracks, it's like an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think there's like 26 songs with the bonus track.
So like once I get like halfway through and I get to like, wow, I can get sexual too and shit, that's when it really gets like amped for me. This Say Anything like led me onto bands. I'm trying to like gather my thoughts here. So I brought up the thing. Say Anything led me to bands like Taking Back Sunday, The Used, My Chemical Romance, Sum 41.
This is real good, actually.
Newfound Glory, like all that like grudgy pop punk, like these guys that just like didn't give a fuck, and they had like messy hair and shit, and they just like wanted to like fuck shit up.
But I think
I loved it.
more than any other band, Say Anything, even though he was bipolar and losing it, like he had self-awareness.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Admitted him yelling at himself for being too pseudo-intellectual is like the most not pop punk thing you can do, but also so pop punk because you're yelling at yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so ironic. And I know that word gets thrown around, but that's one of my favorite things about it is the irony of everything he's yelling about is the same stuff. It all comes full circle. Sorry, go ahead, Tommy.
And you might have to correct me, but like one of my favorite parts in that album is when it might be during that part where he's like, I do drugs and I drink to like cover up my social anxiety, and he like freaks out and stuff. I'm just like, fuck yeah, like I don't know, that album's super, super dope. It's something I used to listen to a lot, and it's something I haven't listened to in a long time, actually. And to bring that back today, I was so excited, and I'm gonna start listening to it again on a regular basis because it's kind of something like I forgot. So you reintroduced me to it, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that. So, Kev. One person who has not listened to it before yesterday.
I know, this is so wild.
Yeah, no, I'd never even heard of this band before, so I may have just missed the train on it. Again, this kind of falls into that type of music I wasn't listening to at the time. I was kind of raging against at the time, so it makes sense to me that I missed it. I kind of said pretty much all I can say on a first listen to it. I think I definitely picked up on the themes of. I mean, I said it was a fever dream, and then you said he was bipolar, and I was like, oh, now I feel bad. But but no, I mean, it's an interesting listen for sure. I'll definitely give it a second listen, just because I want to actually. The way I typically listen to music is I'll listen to it first for the musical aspect of it, and then I'll go back and I'll listen to it for like the lyrical content. That's just how I consume music. I need at least 2 listens to really get like a true feel for what somebody's trying to do with an album. So I would love to listen to it again and kind of really focus in on the themes of what's going on, because I was kind of listening to it, not really knowing what it was, and it was such a weird slap in the face that I was like, holy shit. And I didn't know really
not what you expected.
Yeah, well, because I know you and your musical taste, so I knew what musically it was going to be like, at least a little bit. But as far as the content of it, I was like, Jesus, man, this is weird and heavy and kind of strangely delightful. I feel like I would really like it if I actually went back and actually dug into it. Again, not my favorite type of music to listen to, but I think I have an appreciation for stuff like that, and especially going back and looking at it as an adult, like an older adult now. I would love to give it a second listen. But as far as like my initial reaction to it, which I think is interesting for, the conversation's sake, is that I had literally no exposure to this whatsoever. My only exposure to it was, again, my previous knowledge on the kind of music you listen to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. Weird, but delightfully so.
Yeah.
I have a sidebar.
Go ahead.
I have a little social experiment I'd like to do.
Okay.
We should rip Kevin a mixtape of our favorite like genre of song, like just one of each of the like of our favorite bands from this genre, and just sit down and
That's
watch
fine.
and
I mean,
listen
I
to
love
it.
music, guys. Like music, if I had to like list of things that I appreciate the most about life and it's experiencing music would be one by a large margin. Just for the reasons we've already talked about, that it is intensely personal and there is so much of it. I mean, music is one of the oldest things out there as far as like people experiencing things. I mean, and if you think about the history of music, it was largely the same up until the beginning of the century when, you know, classical turned into like big band and then we kind of evolved from there. So music as we know it is a very like pretty new phenomenon. So the just the depth and breadth of stuff that's happened in the last 120 years or so is fucking insane. So
Yeah.
I would love to, I mean, you think that would be, I mean, I understand like you think it would be funny and stuff like that.
No, not at all. I don't think it'd be funny. I just you making the point that you avoided this genre.
Yeah, I did.
So like, there's probably a lot you haven't heard, and you'd be like floored at some of this
Yeah.
stuff. Like, oh my god, this is actually pretty dope.
Yeah.
Well, we're also getting into the territory where I wouldn't. Don't say that because I might not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Telling Kev he has to do something is
Well,
how
no,
you
it's
get
not
him
even that.
there.
It's just like you were so hyped about this, and
Yeah.
if I listen to it and then I don't necessarily have the same reaction that you want me to have,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that territory where I'm like, I don't know, guys, it's all right.
No, I want your honest opinion.
Again, that plays into my thesis about why I picked my album is that like some of the things that I love, I'm floored about that I think there's no way anyone could dislike this. But then as soon as I hear criticism, I'm like, I have nothing to back it up, and I feel like kind of shot down by it. So, yeah, music is a tricky subject to really discuss. So
this is for me. This is an album where my life kind of just like there was a period of my life before this album, and after this, I felt like I was a completely different person. So it is kind of personal that I gave it to you guys and wanted to hear what you guys thought. But at the same time, especially in this one, it is so off the wall and so wild that it meant something to me. And if you guys didn't feel the same way, that's okay. But having a song where you say, "What do old people teach us except how to die?" is just like, it's so naive, but at the same time, there's other songs that are so deep and so poignant. Like the song "Whoa." If you listen to no other song from the album, "Whoa" is the most important song to me on that album. But it's kind of a song of maturity, or an album of maturity. You go through a lot of emotions listening to it. Like the Spider song is strictly about sex.
Love the Spider song.
And there's other songs, you know, trying to accept criticism and an orgy of critics and trying to deflect blame when something doesn't go right. The whole album as a whole, I think, is just one of those. It's an important one, and I'm going to tell my kids when they get older, hey, this is an important album, and my kids will probably tell me, "Fuck off, Dad, I don't want to listen to it." Kind of like how my dad.
This sucks, Dad.
Kind of like how my dad was with. Anytime my dad told me a song was a classic, it made me not want to listen to it.
That's such a dad thing to say. Oh, this is a classic.
Oh, you're
son.
gonna love this. This is a classic.
Yeah,
and you hear it like,
crank it up, bruh. I know my dad never said bruh, but yeah.
but I don't know. I'm excited about your guys' reactions to it because it was such a innovative time in my life. Because Tommy and I touched on it when we were driving together. I guess it was a longer drive than I thought because we had a lot of conversation.
I
on the
know.
way home.
Or you were just
didn't
talking
save
really
it for
fast.
the pod.
We might have been. We might have been talking in hyperspeed. But both our albums, 2004 and 2005, are kind of the times where we started making decisions for ourselves, especially in music. You get on Yahoo Music and you just go down the rabbit hole of clicking music videos and stuff. So Say Anything's as a Real Boy, if someone hadn't burned that for me and handed it to me and said, "Hey, listen to this guy just kind of lose his mind," I don't know if I'd be the same person.
Yeah.
So that was very... let's talk about what happened in 2004.
You're getting more jazzy with it every time. I love it.
It's more NPR-y now.
In 2004, such music albums, the most popular of the year, came out, such as American Idiot by Green Day, How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb by U2, Confessions by Usher came out that year, Encore by Eminem, Hot Fuss by The Killers came out this year. I don't know the full album title, but Our Endless Numbered Days, I think is what it is, by Iron and Wine came out this year.
Ooh, Iron and Wine. I haven't thought about them forever.
Great band. And great record, too.
Yeah.
Hopes and Fears by Keane came out that album. The College Dropout also came out that year, Kanye.
My favorite Kanye.
Under My Skin by Avril Lavigne came out that year. The Franz Ferdinand original LP dropped that year. Britney Spears put out her Greatest Hits album in 2004. Lots of best hits this year. Musicology by Prince, Def Leppard's Best of Def Leppard record came out this year. James Blunt's really
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, that the album that had that and
I saw an angel. Oh, that I'm sure. She smiled at me on the subway. She was with another man.
Yeah. A great album too.
Yeah, it is. I actually love that song. And James Blunt's a cool ass dude too. If you've never seen like an interview with him, he's dope as fuck. Like
Really?
he's not like a little pansy boy like his songs would lead you to believe. Like I think he served in the military. He's actually kind of like a cool dope ass dude. Like
Well, he takes his shoes off in the snow and gets naked in that
he's
music
cool.
video.
He's
kind of weirdo does that?
He's an interesting fella for sure.
Tub.
Good Charlotte, The Chronicles of Life and Death
fuck, Good
songs came
Charlotte.
out
God.
that album.
That Good Charlotte like epitomizes everything I hate.
What if I would have picked a Good
Fuck
Charlotte
Good
album?
Charlotte? I would have told you exactly how I feel about Good Charlotte, and it's fuck Good Charlotte.
You'd have liked me.
Dude,
less.
no. I can tell you right now, I hate all Good Charlotte songs.
What was the one that got him really popular though?
Lifestyles of the Rich and the Famous.
Lifestyles of the rich and the famous.
It was
it's
on
a fake
Madden.
punk. It's a fake punk song.
I don't remember that being. There was another Good Charlotte song that was like, it was on this album.
They're always complaining.
Yeah, the song that made them rich and famous. They complain about the rich and famous. Fuck off, Good Charlotte. Seriously.
Yeah, if
The
you're listening.
anthem.
Oh yeah.
That's the anthem.
That-
Get your
that-
damn hands
that-
up there.
yes.
Yeah. I don't want to be just like you.
That was on
Yeah,
Madden.
that was also on Madden.
I've listened to that song more times. I
Yeah.
fucking hate
If it's
that
on
song.
Madden,
songs are the worst.
I have the opposite opinion.
Really?
Yeah, I love Madden
Oh,
songs.
dude, I think I've just heard them so much because there
Yeah.
are some songs that I legitimately like. Like one of my favorite Barons, Baroness, had a song, and it's one of my favorite Baroness songs on Madden. And I was like, "What the fuck? Why is Baroness on this Madden?" But yeah, largely, if it was on Madden between 2001 and 2007, I fucking
It was
hate
a banger.
Drastic opinions there.
Yeah.
Did anyone play Need for Speed Underground 2?
Oh, I
that
did.
had some
You
bangers.
mentioned it.
That had some bangers on it. That music.
Video
was
game
great.
music. That would be a good topic.
It is
Yeah.
a good topic.
Guys, I'm so excited we did this.
Yeah.
Me too.
I thought it was productive for me. I don't know if it was productive for anyone else, but for me, hearing what you guys thought about an album close to me, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It was a fun thing to be a part of. Because if we didn't have this forum, it would kind of be sporadic. If we didn't have as much structure, I think it would get a little unhinged.
I'm a bit upset I didn't pick a weirder album. I really wanted you guys to hate
Oh,
the album
boy.
that I picked.
Oh,
I should have picked Roots by Sepultura. Your homework, everybody.
So-
The Roots by Sepultura.
Yeah,
That's
might
my
give
next
it a
topic.
Hey, we're free. This is a free reigning conversational I don't know how many fucking times I can say this shit. Free reigning conversational Maybe one of these days Kevin just wants
That'll
to
be our
do
hook.
that as a topic, that whole album. Do
It
2
would-
hours
honestly,
on
I think
one
it would
album.
be super interesting. I think you guys would kind of like it, but also fucking hate it.
So, albums that changed my life, Volume 2, coming from Kevin Carter.
Maybe.
This is not the last time we'll talk about music.
Oh,
Let's
no,
absolutely.
be real.
no.
There-
I just said music is the most important thing in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
we
I think that's why it's important that I kind of kept it from being like the most important. We don't want to blow our load too fast.
Yeah.
For lack of a better way of wording it.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a lot left to touch on.
But I think us talking about 4 albums and we probably still went to 2 hours.
Yeah,
we there?
we're just
Okay.
short of 2. So
amazing.
we're coming in.
Okay.
Coming in for the landing.
Well, that's probably a good spot to stop for me. Tommy, you're up next week.
Yes, I
what
am.
do you have your topic for next week?
I do. I think I do.
Let's hear it.
Do you want to know now?
Yes.
I might.
It's up to you. It's your week. You can let the people know, or you can leave them hanging in the suspense. Leave their dicks flapping in the wind.
I think I'm going to do collections.
All right, I like that.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Like stuff you collect, you wish you could collect, stuff anyone has ever collected, collections, just anything. Collections.
Cool.
collection.
It's a vague enough, broad enough topic that I think we'll have some fun with it.
Yeah. And then I'll have some notes for you guys soon. So you guys, I probably will have you guys pick something you collected like early, now, and something you wish you could. So something like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because
And
I am a bit of a hoarder.
So next week, this episode will go live this coming Friday. That would be the 31st of January. Next week, the episode will go live on the 7th, hopefully, of February. The week after that, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie does come out.
Oh, is it our Sonic?
So we'll have to talk about semantics, but yeah. So we've got a packed schedule coming up.
That's a side episode.
Yeah, definitely a side episode. I'll
You don't
still
wanna
be the
burn your
last
turn on
the
that?
No. I'm not
Next
gonna.
episode, Sonic the Hedgehog.
I'm not
It's
throwing
strong.
my pick to the wind. That'll be a canonical episode.
Yeah.
Just a non-rotating host episode.
Even
So-
if we feel ashamed of it and we want to put it on Queen City Pod.
No. Okay. This is going on.
Is that your dumpster pile?
No. We said from the beginning.
We put the trash in the Queen City Pod.
We said from the beginning that Sonic the Hedgehog was going to be on this new
Yeah.
show, that we were going to break in the wedding bells, that we were going to ring in the parade with fucking Jim Carrey hamming it up.
I'm so excited for just like an unscripted.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, yeah.
all four of us like, what the fuck did we just watch?
Yeah.
So
But it's going to be like,
before we close, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at $beerpod, on Insta at $beernight, and if you have any questions, email us at $beernightshow@gmail. That was easy to follow. And also follow my older brother has a brand called Dapper Apparel Company. Follow them on Instagram and Twitter as well. Any
I'm
any
at
more
Zach.
words?
I'm at Zach Rotello on all social media platforms if you want to reach out and hang out. I also do a show called Radiovania. I'm sure John Parker and I will be back to do some nerd culture discussion here in the next few weeks. Tommy?
Me and my wife just launched or teased. I'm trying to get the right Instagram here. Just like if we're doing plugs, might as well plug it.
Oh, yeah. Plug it up.
Yeah, for sure.
Toughluck.co. We're gonna release some fun things. We're not really doing it for profit. We're just doing it for fun. Me and Aaron like quite frequently brainstorm together creatively. So this is just like our little project that we want to spread to the world. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, fuck it. We're not really worried about it. Yeah. Toughluck.co.
Cool. I don't have anything. I got to poop. If you want to,
K Carter 79.
if you want to talk about,
Mic drop.
if you want to talk about how the BM went, it's at K Carter 79 on all social media platforms.
I am curious on wanting how.
Well, I can just talk to you through the wall.
Well, guys, I think we're finally getting our groove on episode 2. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you all.
Love you.